Hello, I'm Christina, astrology coach at Heart Horizon Astrology and host of Astrology with Heart. How are you doing? We're now on, can you believe it, episode 13 of the podcast. It has gone so quick. And today I'm going to be talking about the full moon in Libra that's going to be at 12:20. So 12 degrees 20 minutes. It'll take place on the 2nd of April at 3:12 a.m. GMT. I'm based in the United Kingdom, so I'm always going to use United Kingdom or GMT. So please adjust your own location. Now, those of you that have your own natal charts, do have them with you. I want you to take very, very close attention to what is happening at between 8 and around 16 degrees of the cardinal signs. So take a look in your chart where you've got Libra, the opposition Aries, and then in squares to Cancer and Capricorn, because this might have a little bit more effect for you. If you don't have your birth chart and you'd really like one, you can head to my website. The link is below. And you're going to need your date of birth, place of birth, and as close as you can to the exact time. It will really make a big difference. And yeah, just keep that with you when I do these podcasts. Okay. So this month's full moon is in the sign of Libra, the sign of the scales, partnerships, relationships, values, and finances. It's a bit of a broad spectrum in Libra. What's interesting, however, is that it's going to be opposing an army of Aries planets. So we've got obviously always the sun in opposition at a full moon. And then we've got Saturn and Neptune, which are starting to break away from the conjunction now. So it's fading out, but it's still there. At the same time, we have a square to Jupiter in Cancer and a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. As always with full moons, this is going to be a culmination, an ending, a completion point, kind of an aha moment. So it's the end of a cycle. Right, so Libra governs our one-to-one relating. It's very much associated with partnerships and relationships. As the ruler is Venus, it's also aesthetics, art, beauty, attractiveness, and all those typical qualities we would associate with Venus. Negotiation, diplomacy, very sharp and easy social skills, charm and charisma. But I think that one of the primary qualities of Libra is this ability to be able to see another's point of view. And part of that is through the art of listening. And if you look at the shape of an ear, it's like half of a heart. I just love that. So listening is vitally important to understand another and to see their position. And I think that gives Libra that great weight in a relationship. What we do tend to find is that there's more of a steer towards harmony, grace, beautification. Let's keep things nice. Let's keep things happy, peaceful. Let's resolve things. Let's have things balanced. Let's bring both of our views and both of our strengths to the fore, and let's create something better, like that middle ground, that point of compromise. Libra loves for things to be reciprocated, so never one-sided. Now, if we look at the shadow side of Libra, we can take some of those tendencies a little bit too far. We can almost lose ourselves in partnerships where we let somebody else lead and we don't put ourselves forward. We don't let our thoughts or our feelings or our views be known, and we allow others to constantly kind of take over, really. We call that often people pleasing. Okay, whatever you want. whatever you want is fine. You choose for me, that's fine. Even when it's not something that we would choose ourselves. There can be a tendency to avoid making a choice or avoid creating a stir with Venus, typically because it favors that harmonious feeling between people. So I don't want to rock the boat. If I rock the boat, the other person's not going to be very happy, or they're not going to be very angry. Or if I say what I really want, how are they going to react? I've disrupted the peace. Also, there can be a tendency to not speak up or say things from a personal place of desire, like, I want this. This is really what I want. This is really what's important for me. Again, not wanting to kind of knock that boat or tip the scales or be seen to be rude or awful to somebody else. So, it can be a tendency to kind of maintain a peace, but almost kind of grit the teeth in the background, that you're not getting seen or heard or really respected for who you are, what you are, or maybe what you want or what you give. That kind of leads back into, Venus being associated with values. Is the other person really seeing my value in this partnership? Libra would also look to be balanced and fair, and, can be situations where you do your best to be fair and find a solution that's a win-win solution. I'm in this right now with somebody, let's be fair, let's work together, let's find a win-win. We don't have to love each other, we don't even have to like each other, we just have to do something that's right for the other person and for ourselves. And what I find interesting with astrology is that the next sign or the next house almost makes up for what the other house can't achieve. So if Libra is about, can we do this the fair way? If fairness fails, the next sign, Scorpio, says, it's a court case. We'll sort this out one way or another. So do keep in mind a few questions at this full moon, and I will talk about a few more at the end, about where maybe you're over compromising or overly people pleasing or attempting to please the other person, but feeling like there's a part of yourself that is not being seen, heard, realized, that is being kept small. I think that the strongest relationships are those when both people can show up completely authentically and create a little bit of boat rocking, but have absolute respect for the other person's opinion, even if it is opposing to their own. To be able to sit back and say, you know what, I could sit here and just go and nod my head, but in actual fact it's no, and if you respect me, you'll listen to what I have to say, and we can integrate that into the decision that we both finally make. So just keep that in mind. So from that, let's kind of take a look at the axis, right? Let's take a look at, we've got the moon in Libra and we've got the sun 180 degrees opposite in Aries. And we've got quite a lot of extra weight in the side of Aries, because we've got Neptune and Saturn there, which, they're starting to separate, but they're still in a conjunction. So we've got the sun, we've got Neptune, and we've got Saturn, all there like heavyweights opposing this Libra moon. So I think that, I think that reinforces the role of the sun, and the sun is very much about kind of life force, purpose, and identity. And even more so when it's in Aries. Aries is the sign of I am, who am I? I am this. And you'll find with people that are quite Arian, they tend to have a very strong natural sense of who they are. So, I do feel in this full moon that showing up in your authentic confidence of I am this, I give this, I value this, is going to be hugely important, especially with Saturn there, Saturn being that authority. So I am this, and I'm the authority in this, and be very, very assured in it. But I think there's an interesting relationship between Saturn and Neptune, because there is a lot of natural opposition between the two of them as well, just to be aware of. Saturn's energy is to create something long term. It's about crystallization for the long haul. What do I need to commit to? What do I need to hunker down and do and really focus on? And Neptune's like the opposite of that, because Neptune is about dissolving. So we've got these two slightly opposing energies shaping this full moon, right? And I think it's kind of fascinating where we've got, this strong I know who I am, this is my identity part of the Sun in Aries. Saturn saying, well, should we crystallize that? Should we make that really real? And Neptune going, well, if it's not really real, I'm going to take it away, right? So there really does have to be something earned in it. And I'm saying that with the Saturn side. There's kind of a wisdom earned. And if that wisdom isn't earned and isn't owned and doesn't come you, it will disappear. It will fade away. It will dissolve with the Neptune. But there is an opportunity here to be, I think, better, bigger, and kind of stronger than we were before. I want you to bear in mind too that the tendency with oppositions, or with planets in opposition, is that it's something that might come at you from the outside, so an external stimulus that makes a difference, like an event that happens to you rather than something that happens internally, although obviously that can be happening at the same time. It can also be someone else playing that role. So just kind of keep that dynamic in mind. So when we're looking at Aries, and bearing in mind something coming in from the outside or someone else can actually represent that Aries energy. So, Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. It's the baby of the zodiac. And, being the baby of the zodiac means it's like things don't actually go through the head. It just does before it even thinks about it. And so, it can be a little bit reckless in that regard, but there's definitely instinctiveness to it, and a courageousness to it as well. It's like, I don't need to sit here and talk myself out of something, or think my way out of it, or question, or self-doubt. I just go do. So it's totally action orientated. And I think, in the plus side of Aries, it's very much the initiator, the entrepreneur, the bold one who comes in there and just gets the job done. The decision is just made. Kind of makes me think of Trump a little bit, although I'm not sure that's completely good. But there's some kind of there's some qualities there, in the we do just have to get things done at the end of the day too, and not hesitate on them too much. So Aries is very much in the moment. It's associated with battle, with war. It's not always the most agreeable sign. It's quite happy to have a conflicting view and to bring it to the attention of other people. There can be a self-centeredness to Aries. I'm going to put it like that, which if taken to extreme can be deemed to be, a bit more selfish, and that it's not considerate of other people, but then the energy itself doesn't have to be. So I think, when you tap into Aries, it's a time where you focus solely on you, where you look at, what do I want? What do I desire? What can I go for? How can I self-motivate myself? Where do I need to be bold and straight in there and courageous, you know? Where is it usually I'm hesitating, or I'm asking for direction, or I want someone else's viewpoint, when maybe I just need to just think about where I'm at and what I want. And there's a total benefit to that. I mean, Aries at its best is just, wow, like it's so motivational, and it's kind of inspirational as well, that these are the people, the Arian people, these are the people that just, they're doing in life. And you can see that they're doing in life and they're really achieving. That doesn't mean that failure doesn't exist. Of course it does. But it's a little bit like, if you don't do something, your chances of achieving are zero, and they never change from that. But if you do it, you increase your odds. So, there's got to be a benefit in going for things. But if we lean on that Libra side, then sometimes the things we go for might not be the best things to do. Sometimes the involvement of other people actually helps us make better decisions and move towards better actions. A bit of the idea of two heads are better than one. I think with this full moon, it's really vital that we pay attention to ourselves as individuals within any kind of partnership. And this can be like, obviously, your kind of more private, personal, romantic partnership. This can also be any kind of partnership between two people. It can even be a business partnership. So, just kind of being really aware of where you give away your power, and ensuring that everyone within that partnership is obviously a union, but also has individual knowledge, like needs, etc. And they're just as important. Everyone's input is just as important, and being who we are is just as important. So within a relationship, what can that look like? Well, in those conversations where you would normally stand back and say yes, learning that no, and no with some information behind it is okay. Really just accepting that it's okay to disagree with another person. And some of that also feeds into boundaries, and with Saturn here, I think that's going to be themes that are going to be coming up. When is it okay for me to set that boundary? Because I think sometimes those boundaries can kind of erode in partnerships. I think there are times where we feel, because we're in a partnership, we kind of have to do that with the other person or for the other person. And so it's just kind of really just connecting in with yourself and ensuring that, if you feel this is not okay and there needs to be some kind of boundary around it, that you learn to set that boundary, and you learn to speak up and say, hey, I know I've been saying yes to that, but in actual fact, it's not really working for me as it is. Can we just talk through it? I think that's where you kind of get this bit more of an interplay between the Libra and Aries side, or even when, if you're in a relationship where you do everything together, and as lovely as that is to do lots of things together, well, sure, maybe there's things that you want to do that the other person doesn't want to do. And again, giving yourself permission here to say, actually, I know you don't like tennis, but I really like tennis and I want to play tennis every week. My friend, whoever, is happy to play tennis, so I'm going to go do that. Yeah. Or, I know you don't like rock climbing, but I really love rock climbing, and, I'm thinking of going for a couple of days. And, just being able to kind of keep the I in the we. Yeah. And, ensuring that you are always paying kind of homage to who you are as well, and that you your personal desires are equally as important as everything you do for the partnership, and obviously beyond from that, everything you do for your family. We do make a lot of sacrifices, and Neptune there, that might call up sacrifices, places where we give ourselves away, or we give ourselves up, or we self-sacrifice. Sure, I don't need to go climbing with the guys at the weekend. It's okay. I can, I don't have to do that. And I think, when you're the partner of somebody that is in that place where they're saying, hey, remember me, that you empower the other person, that you look at things from their perspective and note, actually, you know what, you've sacrificed a lot here, and I realize you've done a lot for me, and you know what, doing things for you is really important, and I support that. Having those kind of conversations can really strengthen any kind of partnership, and as I said before, it's not just personal, it can be business, it can be any kind of interaction between two people in, any kind of partnership that's going to come up, and really kind of bring that into that value piece as well. Ensure that, that not only that other people value you, but that you value yourself, that you see who you are and you value who you are and stand behind that, like really own that. Aries will own that. Yeah. Aries will say, you know what? I value the fact that I do X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to keep doing X, Y, and Z. And maybe I'll do a bit more. Maybe I'll do G as well. I value myself, and I am equally as important. And oftentimes we do have to stand up for ourselves. And there can be the feeling of, if I stand up for myself, what's going to be the reaction? Don't worry about the reaction. Don't immediately worry about the reaction. Otherwise, you will never stand there and say what you need to say. It doesn't mean don't care about the reaction. It means if you will trip yourself up initially if that is your first thought. And I think that, even though Aries is, definitely known for being, passionate and fiery and not listening, like I've an Aries moon. If I'm on one, I'm on one. But I've learned how to contain that fire, and other directions you can take it in. And it's definitely something you can tap into for an immediate motivational boost. So, there's benefits and negatives with any sign. It's just a matter of tapping into them. So let's talk a little bit about some of these aspects. Let's talk a little bit more about, this Saturn here and a few other aspects that are happening. So Saturn is, old man time, right? Very conscious of the time that we have available and when time is disappearing and that we are getting older physically, yeah? When you're young, you don't think about that. But as you get older, you start to think, oh gosh, I've had all these years on this earth. I don't have as many left as I had when I was young. You start thinking about what you can fit into that time. Saturn is also about where we apply ourselves, where we commit ourselves for the long haul. It's very serious, No Saturn in a symmetry chart, maybe no long-term relationship or marriage. It's not significant or serious enough to be able to bed it in the long term. There are consequences with Saturn. It's a sign of responsibility. It's a sign of karma. What you do can come back to you, and sometimes very quickly. It's kind of that law and order piece that we need. And with it being there with Aries, if we don't have a little bit of consideration about where that recklessness could take us, then it could be horrific. So Saturn is kind of giving it a bit of a safe container and a bit of a serious steer at the same time. So, with Aries, it's that embodiment of desire, or the embodiment of a desire in motion, because with Aries, it's the movement where it starts to learn. It's like it has to have the raw and the real experience to understand itself. So where with some of the other signs, it's more about the contemplation or more about the thinking process or the theoretical part of it. With Aries, it's in the doing. So when I do something, I learn, I grow. And keep that in mind, because with Saturn there, again, there's huge opportunity for a major growth here, major maturity in that. So, we're looking at bringing ourselves to the fore, standing up for ourselves, honoring our self-identities, doing that in a way where we can start to crystallize it, so make it really strong and have it something that we can have long term, strengthening and challenging ourselves to do that so we can take it longer term within all of our partnerships. Also with Neptune there, I said about Neptune fading, but Neptune's also about, spiritual connection, a connection to, I don't know, source or God, or, whatever we believe to be an ultimate creator, or what we feel, but maybe we don't see, or we don't know, we don't fully understand. And so, I spoke about it on the last podcast about Neptune being, it's like the sands that drift and wane, or almost like smoke. It's kind of there and then it's not, but it's that unformed energetic Play-Doh. And we can play with that a little bit with Neptune there. We can play with that until we can properly crystallize it with the Saturn. And it's a great time to do it, right, while they're still kind of in a reasonable conjunction, because, they will separate much more. Neptune is our dreams. And maybe the root to that dream is that we have to make a change. Maybe we do have to do something for ourselves. I have a good friend who, is in a marriage and made a decision about a new business route. She made a big decision that honored who she was within that partnership that could have really rocked the boat. But they have a strong foundation. And so, the love is a loose grip comes to mind, that, when you have that strong foundation, if there's something that you need and you bring it to the other person, if you really, truly love each other, you can support and nourish that need and allow it to become physical. So, if you do have a dream, then this is a point where that dream can become a reality. The ruler of this the full moon is Venus, and it's in the sign of Taurus, so it's in the other sign that it rules, the inner yin feminine nature of Venus. So really this can pull up themes of, self-worth and self-esteem. And I think that actually feeds in quite well in this, standing up for ourselves and being courageous and really thinking about what we want and maybe what we've not allowed ourselves to have, of really kind of strengthening that self-worth enough to be able to do that. And also in that process being a bit chicken egg. By doing it, we also strengthen our self-worth and self-esteem. I'm going to pull up the chart here now so you can take a look and maybe simplify it down, and you'll see those two aspects that we have, the square to Jupiter in Cancer and also that trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Now that trine to Pluto in Aquarius, right, I think when we see Pluto here in such a lovely, flowing, easy aspect, is like, here's the route from lead to gold. Here it is, right? A stunning thing to know that is within reach and within easy reach. Self-empowerment. But I do think there's always a bit of a rite of passage with any Pluto aspect, a bit like you got to work through hell, huh? Oh yeah, you got to work through hell, and it doesn't have to be a long walk, but there's a little bit of it. And I think, if you're someone that hasn't stood up for yourself as much and maybe been as courageous, it does take a bit to do that. But no, with this trine, that's really supportive of that. It's going to be super, super self-empowering to do that. And that, it is the lead to gold, I call the lead to gold placement. There is something potentially really, really strong for you at the end of it. Usually with Pluto, it's the power hit. And with that Libra, it's like, we can become the power couple. We kind of have to step into a higher form of ourselves. With the square there to Jupiter in Cancer, this is a bit more edgy. Squares tend to be a little bit like, chalk on a chalkboard. With Jupiter, Jupiter kind of softens it a little bit because it tends to be a real positive sign in general, but in Cancer, they're like, it's going to expand it. That's my general feeling on it, is those feelings and those emotions are going to be much bigger. Jupiter can tend to over dramatize a little bit or over expand, especially with the square. So it might be on that route to gold that there might be some ugly tears. Might be a few things that are really, really tricky emotionally, leading before you get to more of that breakthrough into empowerment zone. You might be a few eruptive displays. You've got all that Martian energy, and then you've got Pluto there, which can be pretty volcanic too. It could be some really big arguments. But I think having Cancer there at all says there is, and I think you still have to be having Saturn there. Yes, I have to stand up. Yes, I have to be courageous. Yes, I might have to really shout, but I need to maintain a sense of this safety here and this space of commitment, because we always have to be aware of how far we go at when we hit the boundary where we've gone over the boundary, there's no going back. So I want to leave you with a few questions. These are really nice, mindful prompts as we head towards this full moon in Libra. And there's just 4 of them here. Kept it kind of neat and tidy this week. So what do I need that I'm not asking for? Where am I smoothing things over, pleasing others to avoid discomfort? If I accept the truth here within this partnership, what do I have to do? Bearing in mind that Aries has to be doing something. It's the energy of motion. What commitment right now would feel honest and sustainable? So just keep them in mind. You don't have to remember them. They're also on the website. I'll put the links down below for you. And then I want to give you one ritual, and there's 3 rituals here, so you can take a look at the others on the post as well. But this one I quite like. So it's called the 3-minute weigh-in. And so you're really just going to write down 3 pros and 3 cons within something that is happening for you within a relationship. And then you're going to fold up the piece of paper, you're going to keep it in your mind, and you're just going to burn it in a flame, nice and safely, obviously. Okay? Just to really keep, like, it kind of pays homage, to be honest, to the standing up and being, open and honest, and also to that balance that Libra has, because in everything there is benefits and negatives. In everything, those things equally do exist. So just remember that all the links are below. You can read through the blog post, which is a little bit different, on the website too. You can create your natal chart on the website. And there's also the charts as well if you are listening to the podcast and you don't have them to hand. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. A million thank yous for showing up and for listening to me rambling on. I really do appreciate it. Please do feel free to share this podcast, leave a review, write a comment. Be courageous with me. Oh dear, should I ask? You can also follow me on TikTok or Instagram. Whatever feels good for you, and we'll be back in a few weeks. Thank you.